Oh man, one of those classic movie scenes. Anybody ever overcompensated for something that's going on inside of you, and you just find yourself in a situation like, I don't even know where that came from? Well, we're gonna talk about that a bit this weekend, and man, so good to see you guys. So good to have you with us. My name's Kurt. If you're here for the first time, we certainly hope it's not your last time. Let's make some noise for those tuning in online with us this weekend. Man, so excited to have you guys joining us. YouTube online and Crosspoint online, and wherever you're tuning in from, here with us in the room. So excited. We are in week 3 of this series, People Skills, and we've been talking about how to lead and love others better. We're really talking about a guide to doing that. And we've been looking at how communication isn't just something that is said, but it's also what is heard. In fact, many of us over the last few weeks, we've been getting into small groups where we've been actually dialoguing on what this means. We've been understanding our temperaments and how that plays into the words that we speak. We've been really referencing using this book by Kathleen Edelman called I Said This, You Heard That. Perhaps you've had moments where you said something, somebody else heard something entirely different. A lot of this has to do with our temperament and some other factors that play in, as we're going to talk about today. And so even if you're not in a group, man, I really encourage you to pick up the book, which you can pick up at any bookstore. You can pick up out in our commons area as well. Now, if it's your first time with us or it's your first time in a long time, I really encourage you to go back and listen to the last 2 weeks, watch them, kind of get caught up with us. You can find that at crosspointweb.org/watch. And as long as the internet is up and active, you can actually find them there. So I want to tell you about a moment that happened to me last weekend. Weekend was pretty full. Sunday started here at Crosspoint, doing my thing here at Crosspoint teaching, and then went to the Indy 500. Anybody make it to the Indy 500 this week? Oh man, great race. Enjoyed that. When we got home, had some yard work to continue doing that we didn't get done the day before, and I was wrapping up around, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, taking all my tools to the garage, and I see one of my neighbors walking around the corner waving at me. Hey, Kurt, do you have a moment? I have something I need to tell you. And I was just so tired, emotionally drained, tired, and I said to her, I really don't. And I'm like, where did that come from? Like, who says that? But I did. I said, I really don't. She said, well, I'll just take a moment then. And so, we had a moment of conversation, but I just thought, gosh, what was that? Why did I say that? And as I kind of reflected on that, I realized, okay, that really had nothing to do with her. It really had everything that had to do with me and things that were going on inside of me and actually came out in that moment, which is what we're going to talk about this weekend. Because I just think, when it comes to relationships, I think relationships would be so much simpler if we entered every relationship with a heart that was just full. Very, very full, very, very healthy. Maybe perhaps, in your life, you'd always had everything wonderful and amazing. And in your relationships, in your past, where your dad attended every game and your mom was at every recital and, your parents just like poured into you. Not that you didn't have some bumps along the way, but even then they poured into you, had friends who poured into you, and nobody ever took advantage of you. Nobody ever, kind of abused you or did anything where they mistreated you, and your heart was just so full. I mean, I just think if we were in that place, relationships would be so much easier. But if your life is like mine, and as I interact with people, I realize nobody's in that place. In fact, the reality is most of us are dinged up a bit, right? I mean, our dad didn't attend every game we had. In fact, he didn't come home some nights, perhaps. And, our moms, in some cases, were dealing with their own issues, and we didn't even realize that they were working on stuff from their past until perhaps later in our lives. And, perhaps there was abuse in your family, or abuse of, alcohol or drugs, and or maybe you just had like a younger sibling, a brother who was like a wild child and demanded a lot of attention from your parents, and you were the golden child, but you didn't get any attention because everything went to him. And so you just kind of felt rejected. I mean, we could all talk about our issues, right? We could have like a little old pity party about the things that we carry with us into our relationships and bring into our present. And so I want to kind of illustrate how this begins to affect us this weekend, and specifically what it has to do with how we communicate with one another. So I want to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Mugg. This is Mr. Mugg. Say, hey, Mr. Mugg. This is Mrs. Mugg. Hey, everybody. And Mr. and Mrs. Mugg, they met right after college. And when he saw her, he's like, woo, really like her. And she's like, wow, that's a guy with a degree and a future. And he's like, yeah, she is a knockout. So, she's got all that going with her, for her right there. And so they started dating and, hanging out, and they were so careful. I mean, they really were careful with each other. They watched their words. He was trying to win her heart, and she was trying to win his affection. And, they had a few little bumps along the way, but they were so careful. And even when they had the bumps, I mean, they were thoughtful with each other. They paid attention to what was going on with the other person. And then they got married. And for whatever reason, about a month into their marriage, they just had a moment where all of a sudden they hit like a bump and stuff like came out. And he looked at her and he's like, what was that? And she's like, well, I didn't know you had anger issues. And like stuff came out again. And he's like, well, I didn't know I had anger issues either. But like when you bump me, like stuff just kind of like comes out. And then, before long, they had another problem, and they just kept like bumping into each other. And before long, she went to her sister. She like laughed. She's like, hey, I didn't know that he was like this. And her sister's like, my word, I didn't know he had anger issues. I've never seen that before. And he went to, actually, we don't really know where guys go. Perhaps his basement, I don't know. He stood in front of the mirror. I mean, he's just like, man, every time I think of her, I just get so mad. I get so mad. She just like kept bumping me and stuff would come out and it would just make me so mad. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like my wife, she has issues. And so he's like, when we were dating, like this never happened. I'd never seen this before. And he's like, but every time we get an argument, like stuff just comes out. And of course, she's like, well, you make me act that way. This has been entertaining so far, right? Even though we haven't learned anything, it's been entertaining. So now here's what I want you to see. Mr. Mugg, he thinks the blue beads just keep kind of coming out because they keep having conflicts, right? And she keeps bumping into him. And Mrs. Mugg, she thinks the pink beads keep coming out of her because, well, they keep having problems. And he keeps bumping into her. And so here's the truth, though. See, the blue beads, the reason they're coming out of Mr. Mugg is because they're in there. And the reason for Mrs. Mugg that her pink beads kind of come out whenever they, bump into each other, it's because they're in there. And this is so important because this isn't just like a dating issue or a marriage issue that this happens in, but like this could be like with your in-laws or your sister-in-law, brother-in-law, or perhaps your adult children, or even your teenage children, or even people you work with, people that you're close in relationship with. All of us have stuff that we don't even know that's in us sometimes until we get bumped into. And then it just kind of comes out and we go, my goodness, what happened? Where did that even come from? I can't even believe I said that. That just is so out of character for me right there. Kind of like that Adele song, the scars of your love kind of leave me breathless. And, he's just absolutely sure that, the reason the blue beads come out is because she gets on his nerves. And, but the truth is the blue beads come out because they're in there. There's something going on under the surface. And she's convinced that if he'd just do less of this or more of that, or, if he'd watch his words, the pink beads wouldn't come out. But the reality is they're in there. And the reason they come out is because there's stuff going on. And see, here's the reality. All of us have stuff in there going on. And what tends to happen is we tend to kind of look at the other person and say, this is your fault, right? You're the one that brought this out of me. And I'm not going to ask you to raise hands if you know what I'm talking about, all right? And so the question is, what do we do? Like, how do we handle this? All right, and the answer is pretty simple, believe it or not. The problem is you and I just don't really do the thing that helps us get through this. And so what we have to do is we have to learn to pay attention to what's going on inside of us. All right, and we don't do that very well.